So hello world, my name's Amelia, and this is me trying to do my post-op video that I had promised was going to be doing. This might be a long video. I'm not exactly sure how long I can expect this video to be. There's a lot of content to go over. It's mostly going to be just story time, and I know that's probably not going to keep attention of very many people for very long while watching this video, but for the most part, I just want to share my experiences. Hopefully, as things continue to develop, I'll be able to do more frequent videos now that I'm actually very quickly approaching 4 weeks of recovery. So, as I previously pointed out, as I am currently doing, I am finally starting to feel like myself. I'm starting to move around, starting to get back on my feet. The current feel, since most people are probably going to be more interested in what it feels like now, 4 weeks after the fact, I'll start out on that. So I can basically say I have no regrets. It took me easily the first week after surgery. I was still having some unsureties of what was going on. Like, my brain was still trying to map everything out and be like, well, there was something there and now it disappeared. Like, what happened? It took my brain a little while to finally figure that all out. But now it's something I look at. When I take a shower, it still can kind of be a little strange because it'd be like, oh, well, this is different. So it can be kind of weird not feeling what anymore. It's not so much feeling it as it is feeling the mind of its own, let's say. So basically, I have not even looked back at it. I now think about it and I'm just like, whoa. I'm like, well, this just feels right now. I have no regrets doing it. I have no, not even once so far have I all of a sudden looked down, even during some of the most painful moments of my recovery, have I looked down and just been like, well, I wish I didn't do this. And that's saying something, considering that not everything is perfect. So there's some interesting news, I guess, per se. I will be sharing towards the end of the story. But anyways, so the way this basically all went down, you guys saw my video. I think I posted, one of the last things I posted was right prior to my surgery. I know I did my COVID test on that Sunday. I don't think I posted anything for that Monday. But basically Monday was nothing but getting ready to go into the hospital for surgery. So I remember packing my bags. I had 5 different bags I brought with me. I didn't really bring much as far as clothes. I was very much uncertain about my my home situation, what I was going to be returning to, but that's a whole different story. I have planned on making a whole different video about that at a later date. But basically what ended up happening is I packed just in case I was going to have to go to a friend's house. I remember them calling me on that Monday, and originally I had found out that my surgeon had requested my surgery to start at 10 a.m. However, the hospital did not give her that time. The anesthesia called me and told me to be there at, if I can remember correctly, at 11, and my surgery was going to be at 1 o'clock. I didn't exactly like hearing that news because I was supposed to stop eating the night before. I was only supposed to have water up to 2 hours before. I was just my brain, I was just I don't want to have to be thinking about, I don't want to be sitting around that Tuesday morning and all of a sudden just be oh my gosh, I gotta be there, I'm not looking forward. I just really wanted to wake up. wake up and just go straight to the hospital, which unfortunately was not the case. That did cause transportation issues. Originally, my neighbor was going to give me a ride, and then all of a sudden it was like that just threw a wrench into the gears. I could not find a ride. Ultimately, my neighbor did feel bad, and she offered to help pay for me to get a paid transportation service, which I very much appreciate of her. So basically what happened, I woke up that morning and I surprisingly actually got sleep that night. I can't really explain why I actually slept, which is surprisingly, just kind of add on top of this, I have actually been sleeping pretty decently ever since my surgery. Kind of a little hard when I'm in a lot of pain, but recently, because my pain levels have gone way down in the past 4 days or so, I have been getting definitely much fuller night sleeps. So basically what ended up happening that morning, I woke up, I remember just being like doing my last final checks. We had it all figured out what time the person was going to come get me. And then suddenly my phone rang at like 9 in the morning, and it was somebody who worked with Dr. Gray, and she had told me, she was like, hey, we need you to get here as soon as possible. Dr. Gray is running ahead of schedule. She wants to get you in here so that we can maybe start early. That did kind of put me for a little bit of a panic. Was not expecting that at all to happen. But it did get me there. And so I immediately had to call and be like, hey, I need my transportation here earlier and all this other stuff. And I hurry up and I got ready, and I remember going out the door. And I got in the car and everyone sat there, and they said like my neighbor happened to actually be home. And she came across and she was like, oh, bye, see ya. My roommate came out and she was like, oh, okay, bye, see ya, hopefully. Because the plan stay was I was going to be in the hospital for 3 days. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday I was going to be in the hospital. Getting there was the craziest thing I have ever experienced in my life. The drive was surprisingly a little longer than I had expected. I, of course, had my face mask on the whole time because it was a paid transportation service. And I can even remember doing a couple video clips. And it was quite the journey. We got to the hospital. He drops me off. I got out. And it was just like, it was interesting because I literally felt as every step I made to get inside was like, I was just expecting it to go fast from there. I think I got there about 10 o'clock. I walk inside. I got to the admissions. Admissions checked me in. They put the wristband on me. And then they told me to go upstairs and go into, I believe, waiting room number 3. I got up there. It was kind of confusing because, like, I have never done anything like this in my life, so I didn't know what to do or who to talk to or whatever. I got up there. I found a chair. I sat down. Of course, there was all the social distancing and all the face masks going on, which is something that kind of just adds to the stress level. I remember sitting down, and then finally I saw someone come out of the back. There was like a double door going out the back of the waiting room, and somebody came out and they told me, or I caught them and I'm like, hey, what am I supposed to do? And apparently there was some paperwork I had to fill out. They took care of everything. I labeled my bags, and you probably just heard me hit my mic. They had me label my bags, and then I basically had to sit down and wait. Eventually somebody came to me. She told me everything that was going on. It was kind of funny when her eyes kind of went big when she was like, oh, you have 3 surgeons, which I had Dr. Gray, Dr. Punruru, and Dr. Broghammer. So her eyes kind of like went big, like, oh. And then she told me that the surgery was going to be 5 hours long, which, to be honest, I was a little surprised to hear that, because I wasn't actually quite expecting I wasn't quite expecting such a surgery. I was thinking, from what I was originally told, it was going to be like 2 or 3 hours. But I was like, really? It's 5 hours? And like, yeah. And she even told me that that was actually kind of long, which it wasn't like the longest surgeries they've done, but she definitely told me it was a long surgery, which I don't know, just to me that seems kind of surprising. So anyways, I sat down and I waited. And I waited. The whole entire time I was sitting there messaging a new friend I had made. Her name was Liz, which I'm hoping maybe to do a future video featuring Liz. You know, hi Liz, if you happen to come across this video. She's someone who went to KU Med roughly 4 months prior to me. She had even shared some of her post-op photos with me, so it was kind of nice to get a, you know, in the moment, kind of get to talk to somebody who went through all the same things as me. And she was like, yeah, I can remember being all nervous in the waiting room and stuff like that. She's like, just calm down and stuff like that. And eventually, I remember when it started. All of a sudden, right as I was at the end of my texting there, the door opened, a guy came out and he goes, Amelia Green. And I was like, and I stood up and I just was like darted right towards him and followed him right out the door. The first thing that happened, he walked me down this hallway to the right. First thing he asked me was, he was like, okay, so what are we doing today? And I was kind of looked at him like, why do I have, wait, what am I telling? And of course, because I have actually become much more passable in public, it was kind of difficult because I hate to admit to people that I'm trans. Like, unlike some trans people I have as friends, I do not like admitting in public that I'm trans. Like, even in times when it kind of gets, like, on an edge that maybe I should tell them, I still don't want to tell them. Like, back at the time that I actually had somebody ask me about my cycle, I ended up just kind of pausing, and ultimately I ended up telling the nurse, I was just like, I don't get a cycle. And then she just looked so bewildered at me. Like, most trans women would then use that as the opportunity to say, oh, I'm trans, that's why I don't get one. But for me personally, I was like, oh no, I just don't get one. Which is true. It's not wrong. And I mean, if you really honestly think about it from a medical point of view, it's not, they're only asking, like in the case that I was being asked because I was about ready to get x-rays done. And they were only asking because they were trying to make sure I wasn't pregnant. So, good reason to ask, but also I'm not, like, it's not like I was being bad by not answering that I was trans. I am female for that fact. So, anyways, takes me in the back. They had me weighed. I really quickly asked to use the bathroom because I don't know why I had to use the bathroom that morning, which is kind of funny, but that was a good thing. I used the bathroom, and then he led me over to this, like, bed that was behind a curtain. He told me, well, we're going to go ahead and have you change, which they did. I pretty quickly got to change into my hospital gown. And then as soon as I was in the bed, within 3 minutes, there was a team of people that came in. One of them was over by the computer, started asking me medical questions. Well, there was like 3 or 4 other people that just stood around me at the bed. So here I am laying back in this bed, and they were all standing around me. And they just started doing one thing after another. So there was the person who sat there and started putting my IV in, which, just for demonstration purposes, it's kind of cool. Ultimately, I ended up with 2 IVs at one point, and an IV that was put back in. They moved my IV, which wasn't really necessary, but anyways. The first one, the one that they did when I first came in, they put in right there. There's just a tiny, tiny little mark left where the needle went in. And then I was told that during surgery, it was very possible that they were going to be putting a second IV in me, which no one actually ever really explained to me why they would have been doing 2 IVs. But this one was done right here on this vein, which again, you can very, very slightly see the see the mark for that one. So anyways, they ended up prepping me. They put the IV in, and like right off the bat, they started filling me up with medications, primarily painkillers, which I wasn't really expecting them to do that right off the bat. Like, they right off the bat started giving me Oxycontin. They gave me, I remember someone injecting me with some ibuprofen, which I thought was interesting that they were mixing the two. They hooked me up to the machine, and here you are hearing the heart monitor going beep, beep, beep. And I was like, it was kind of interesting to look back and see that. That was back over my head, and I just laid there in the bed, and there was just like one thing after another. It was a lot of medical questions. They put a fall risk band on me. They ended up putting an allergy wristband on me because I have a gluten sensitivity. Even though it really was, I even made sure to tell them that it wasn't an allergy, it was a sensitivity. And they still like took it to the most extreme, which kind of became a frustration later after surgery, but that's something for later. So anyways, they got me all hooked up, and then about maybe 30 minutes in, Dr. Gray came in, and she said hi to me, and she was like, hey, we're really close to just getting started and all that. And I was like, yes, okay, I'm so ready. And she ended up bringing a clipboard in, and then she said, okay, we just need you to sign the final consent forms. It was a basic form. It said that it was, interestingly enough, the title of the form said it was an informed consent for surgery. She pointed out the most obvious points on the form. Like, she said, okay, so this form is basically, you're giving us permission, you are consenting to the fact that we are going to be amputating your testicles. We're going to be removing your scrotum, we'll be removing your phallus, we'll be shortening your urethra, and then it went to the other. It was kind of like really weird to hear her first describe all the removal of male parts, and then all of a sudden to flip over and be like, okay, and then we're going to be creating a vagina, we're going to be creating a female urethra, we're going to be creating a clitoris. And she started like naming those things, and then that's when I kind of smiled, like, okay, this sounds fun. Yippee. So I signed the bottom of that form. That was really not that big of a deal. And then it was basically just waiting. Surprisingly, I think I was in the waiting room for like an hour and a half. And then along with that, I was probably in the pre-op area for at least another hour. By the time they claimed I was ready to go into surgery, it was about noon. It was like 12:15. Dr. Gray was really antsy to get started. She got done with her other surgery like really early. But then apparently for some reason, they were claiming they were cleaning the OR room that I was supposed to be going in. And for some reason, that took longer than usual. So I'm literally being told, like, hey, we're ready to set to go. But it's like, yeah, they're in there still cleaning the OR. And first off, I was like, what surgery went before me? So it took a little longer. It was literally not until like almost 1 o'clock that I finally got rolled out of pre-op. So, oh yeah, and then there was several people. There was a couple people that came to see me before surgery. There was somebody who was a student that was going to be watching. There was the anesthesia team came to say hi and, help me get acquainted with them. There was a couple different people that saw me beforehand. I sadly never saw Brockhammer or Panruru. It was only ever Dr. Gray. And eventually I remember laying there and just keeping myself calm, being prepared. And then finally the moment came. somebody from the anesthesia team came in. They walked in, opened the curtain wide, and I remember the first thing was, "We're ready to get started." Now, what was very interesting about this experience was the fact that I was actually told that generally you do not remember anything from this point on. So here I was about ready to just like be like, okay, any minute now, I am just gonna not remember any of this. Surprisingly though, a lot of people tell me that my memory prior to surgery is pretty solid. I remember quite a bit. I've only been able to actually confirm one thing that happened with somebody that happened that I do not remember. So they came over, and the anesthesia person came over and immediately opened up my IV and pulled out 2 syringes, and they just started cramming something into my syringe. They said it was something that was going to start relaxing me. I was expecting that to be the thing to put me out. And of course, obviously, as somebody who doesn't know how anesthesia works, I was expecting almost like the injectable was what kind of got me to sleep, but I actually come to find, I'm like, oh wait, it's actually a gas. Oh wait, oh, I didn't know this. So anyways, that was an interesting experience. So ultimately, they gave me the injectable, and then like, I'm laying there and I'm like, okay, any minute now. And then I remember them unplugging the monitor, unplugging this stuff, and I'm just watching as the team moving, like there was 4 people moving around my bed and things are getting unplugged and they're taking the break off my bed, and then all of a sudden my bed starts moving and I'm laying there, and like the whole time I'm like rolling through the pre-op room, my brain is going, oh my gosh, I'm still awake, I'm starting to freak out because I'm like, I'm still awake. And I started almost like panicking because I'm like, ain't I supposed to be asleep? So because they were telling me that literally, like, most people do not even remember the OR. I remember it. I remember going to the right, rolling down through some double doors, making a right, and then going down another hallway a little bit, and then immediately taking a right into the OR room. They rolled my bed in there, and immediately it was not like anything I expected to see. There was the big lights, there was this metal table. It was surprisingly, it did not feel cold in the room, even though I'm told that apparently my relaxing medication probably is what deceived my brain into thinking it was not as cold as it actually was. So they rolled my bed next to the surgical table, and then these 4 people came over and they helped me. They were like, okay, we need you to move your butt on over to the table. I got up and I scooted off, and it was so funny. They were like, okay, we just need you to move your butt a couple more inches up, and then all of a sudden I felt my butt go plump. There was a hole in the surgical table made for my butt. That was really something else to experience. So I literally felt my butt go bloop, like fall in this little cushion hole. It was so funny. And what was really weird about that is, like, I can understand the point of the hole, because the fact that, you know, hey, it makes a really good way so my body doesn't like slide up and down the table. But it was actually surprisingly, like, I could feel the metal, but the metal was not cold. That was something that was very interesting. And and then they were like, okay, move around, we need you to start laying back. And right as I started, because I can remember basically doing like the spider on the table like this, laying back like this. And right as I was about to go back, there was a door at the far end of the surgical room, and Dr. Gray walked in, and I could watch as she walked in the door. It was just a single door, and she waved at me. She was like this, and I was like, hi. That was like the last person I actually saw prior to surgery. It was like, because it really did, I think the medication was probably starting to kick in, and I don't even really realize it. Even though I can actually remember it, that probably has a lot to do with it just, things started becoming a blur. So she got over, I saw her get on, there was a computer in the corner of the room, I saw her sit down and she started using this computer. And then I was sitting there and they're like, okay, lean back. So I moved my arms in, I started laying back. They told me to put my arms in a certain position, and then they started hooking me up. And I was laying there, and I remember just breathing, and then the anesthesia lady, she reached over and she put a mask on over my mouth. And I remember her saying to me, okay, I'm just giving you oxygen. That's all she said. And I leave, and she just said, start taking deep breaths, calm yourself down. That's what she was saying. And I calmed down, and I just really slowly started breathing. And then I just told myself, this is the beginning of the end. This is no point in fighting it, no point in going back. I was actually surprisingly very calm. And I just told myself, just go with the flow. And I remember eventually I was out. Before I knew it, I was waking up in recovery. So anyways, before I go into the recovery point where it happened once I woke up, I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to go ahead and this will be a part 1 to this video, because obviously, like I said, this is probably going to be very long, me describing this whole story. I probably, for whoever 5 of you that are still watching this out of who knows how many, I appreciate you watching it to the end. I know I'm mostly just uploading this video for historical and just educational reasons. This isn't really an upload like one of my usual uploads. But anyways, I'm going to stop the video. I'll be doing a part 2 about when I woke up. So I will see everybody on the other side. This was probably the longest thing to describe, and I know I didn't really get a chance, so anyways, let's not drag this on. So I will see you all in the next video.